Hello everyone, this is Pradeep Jain from the Access Sciences. I have been with Access Sciences for almost 3 years. It's a wonderful journey to be part of the Access Sciences for 3 years. I'm a solution architect and deal with Office 365, Azure, Cloud, and different Microsoft area. Today in this presentation, we are going to talk about SP 2010 to Power Automate migration. We are going to especially talk about the benefits and the pain points that's organization already been gone through, or they are going to see it in the future if they are planning to move into Power Automate. So let's jump. This is a high level dates. We should not be talk about it because the date is already passed. The date is November 1st. If you haven't requested for the extension, if you have requested for the extension, it means you have a date till March 1st. If you not, it means your SharePoint online tenant, in your SharePoint online tenant, the workflow, SharePoint and workflow are stopped at this point. They are no longer running. Don't worry about it. If you have a SharePoint 2013 workflow, they are still active, they are still running, there's no impact, but we don't know how long they are going to run because Microsoft is going to announce very soon that when they're going to retire the SharePoint 2013 workflow. Before we jump into the Power Automate, let's briefly talk about our powerful Power Platform suite. What Power Platform offer, what kind of tools they offer. So here are the 4 powerful tools. As the name said, power means seriously they are very powerful. So the first one is the Power Apps. Power Apps is a custom app builder that's allow power user or the end user to develop the custom application without writing a single line of code. You have to write without writing a single line of code. Means you can have a component, drag and drop, and here we go. You have a powerful application done. I would say like Power Apps is the good replacement of the InfoPath, but it is more powerful as compared to InfoPath. The second powerful tool is the Power BI, Business Intelligence. This is the tool that organization can use to analyze the data. If they want to create a fancy dashboard reports, they have a good option. They have an option to create using the Power BI. Power Virtual Agent, one of my favorite tools, allow us to write or develop the chat bot without writing a single code. And like when they released the Power Virtual Agent, I was so fascinated about it. And when I just started using that one, I said, oh my goodness, this is a very powerful tool. And when I shared this thing to my client, they really liked it. So if you never try Power Virtual Agent, I would suggest just go and look into that. Here is our star tool that we are going to talk today is a Power Automate, is a survey, is the cloud-based service that's allow you to develop the workflow, means your business process automation without writing a single line of code. Again, not a single line of code. You can drag and drop the hundreds of components or the connector that's available offered by the Microsoft or some third-party provider, and you can actually develop the robust, powerful business automation process. So without wasting your time, let's jump into the Power Automate. As I mentioned to you, that Power Automate is one of the options that you can use or you can choose if you are planning to migrate your SharePoint 2010 workflow into SharePoint Online. There's some other third-party software or the providers available that you can use it, like the K2 is one of the example that you can use it. But if you are the big fan of the Microsoft, then definitely you are going for the Power Automate. And why should not we go for that? If it is already there and well integrated, then we should choose the Power Platform suites, right? So Power Automate, as mentioned, is a powerful tool that's allow you to develop the business process or business process workflow without writing a single line of code, because they offer hundreds of different kind of like components and connector, pre-built connector that you can use it, and develop the robust, powerful process. The Power Automates actually offer a different kind of flows that you can use it for the different scenarios. So here is a few example: the automated flow, button flow, schedule flow, business process, approval flow, UI flow. Most of the organization, they actually use the business process and approval flow, but there's a need for different kind of flows also. So one of the example, like if you are actually working on the robotics or RPA, then the UI flow is the best option. If you are trying to be automate something like some steps or some tasks, then you can use the automated flow. So these flows are based for the different kind of situation and scenario that you are dealing with. And in this presentation, I'm not going to be go in a depth of each and every one, because this one is more focused on like key pain points and benefit of the Power Automate. Now let's talk about the Power Automate integration with the SharePoint, because here we are talking about SharePoint 2010 to a SharePoint, like SharePoint or like Office 365 Power Automate migration, right? So it means we have to look what SharePoint 2010 offer that don't support by the Power Automate and what support by the Power Automate. So if you look into this table, basic table, so you can see the list workflow and the library workflow, the supported by the SharePoint, and they can support, Power Automate can also support them. But the reusable workflow and the site workflow, they Power Automate don't support, Power Automate don't support them, and that's a bummer. Seriously, is the big issue that I'm seeing it, and most of my client and organization, they are also seeing it like, okay, we were able to create all these site workflow and the reusable workflow in SharePoint 2010. It was very handy for us. Now we cannot create it. But there's a problem, there's a solution. This is not a showstopper for us to use the Power Automate. So let's see next. Here is more deep about integration of the Power Automate with the SharePoint core object. Core object means list, library, pages. So this table is talking about that what can be supported by the Power Automate in terms of list, library integration. So most of the time, the major issue that we see it, if you have a classic list or classic library, the Power Automate is challenging. If you're trying to create a custom workflow from the list or library, you cannot create it until unless you don't have a modern list. The same thing if you're trying to run the custom workflow from the item or file or folder in the classic, you cannot do it. You have to have a modern list. So there's a few areas that's not supported by the Power Automate, and there's a few areas that can supported by it. But again, these limitation is not a showstopper to use the Power Automate, because Power Automate offer a lot of great benefit. So now let's jump into the actual main slide. That's the slide I really want to be more focused and want to be talk about that. Okay, the major areas or major key pain points that organization are struggling, or they have been struggle and found some sort of solution, or the organization that they are planning to move into the Power Automate, or they are going to see this thing. So here are the few that I identified. Definitely there's a lot, because I have been working on the Power Automate since long, and actually I'm helping the organization to moving from the SharePoint 2010 to Office 365 Automate, and I'm actually finding a lot. But these are the common pain points that most of the organization face. So let's talk about the resolution too. So the key pain point is the 30 days limit for the flow. If you remember the SharePoint 2010, the flow can live forever, means there is no time limit. If you start the flow today and just wait for the 5 more years, the flow is like your workflow is still running. But that's not the same case with the Power Automate. The Power Automate have a 30-day lifespan, means after the 30 days, your workflow is going to cancel. What should we do now, right? I know that there's a lot of organizations that have a lengthy approval process. Means I have seen some organizations, they have a 5-step approval or 6-stage approval, and those approval cannot be done in the 30 days. So definitely, this is not a showstopper. What you can do is there's a resolution or workaround. The workaround, it means you can break the workflow into multiple steps or multiple flows. Each flow can represent two unique approval, and once the first approval is done, it's going to call the second approval using the HTTP. Or what you can do it, you can actually call or re-entrance or just call your like once your workflow is reached to the 29 days, at that time you can actually use the HTTP service and call your workflow again. So in that way, it's going to be run forever until unless your approval is not done. The second major issue about the HTTP connector, the HTTP connector means in SharePoint 2010, you can able to use the REST API without any extra cost, but that's not the same thing with this Power Automate. In the Power Automate, if you are trying to use the HTTP connector, premium HTTP connector, you have to have a premium license, and the premium license costs extra. So if your organization having a workflows or the flow that's actually using extensively all these HTTP calls, in that situation, I would always suggest to create a service account, assign the premium license to the service account, and then run those kind of flows under the service account instead of assigning the premium license to each and every one. In that way, you can easily save the cost. Custom permission on the list item and the impersonation, that's another issues that's most of the organization is facing it, and they were actually not at all an issue in SharePoint 2010 because we have a step for those two. Like you can easily assign, set the custom permission and do the impersonation in SharePoint 2010. But in Power Automate, these are not an option available. It means we don't have any action available in Power Automate. But don't worry, we have REST APIs. So what we can do it, if you want to achieve the custom permission on the list item, what you can do it, you can actually call the REST API with the HTTP connector. You can actually use the grant permission, revoke permission, whatever label permission you want to set at the item label, library label, list label, you can easily achieve that. Another issues with the Power Automate, the reusable workflow. As I mentioned, this is the big issue, especially for me, because I love to create templates and I love to create a reusable workflow that can be utilized by some other like multiple list or multiple library. But in Power Automate, that's not a case because it does not offer usable workflow. But don't worry, what we can do it here, we can actually create a centralized workflow, and that centralized workflow can be called by the multiple lists and libraries wherever we want. We just need to invoke the centralized workflow using the HTTP call from the actual invoker workflow, or I will say the request workflow. And once they request it, the request will go to the centralized, and the centralized workflow will do all the process. And when the process is done, the response will go back to the actual request workflow. This is a solution actually I have created for one of my clients, and they were really happy because they had a situation where they really wanted to create some sort of template for first stage, second stage, and three-stage approval. And once what we did it, we defined the centralized workflow for all three different stages. And we said, okay, whenever you need to call, just call it from, just set up a one simple workflow, pass the parameter, and then call this centralized workflow and pass all the parameter information to centralized, and centralized will take care of everything. Now, the another issue with this one is the workflow history. In the Power Automate, the workflow history is going to be live only for 28 days. After that, it's going to wipe out. If you have some sort of audit process defined and you really want to keep the workflow history for longer, the best solution here is to keep that data into a separate list. So you can create a one custom SharePoint list and store the workflow history data into that custom list, and once it's there, it's going to live forever. So here are the key point that's we discussed, and as I mentioned, we have a lot, and if I'm going to keep talking, it's going to take forever. So definitely I'm going to work on the different presentation where we are going to talk more on the key points. But at this point, thank you very much for tuning in. And once again, my name is Pradeep Jain. I'm a part of Access Sciences. And if you have any question or concern, you can reach out to me at pjain@accesssciences.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day.